Every day, one form or another, we hear someone talk about the need to heal the rift in America, yet it remains nothing more than wasted verbiage. Because on the surface, there is no one working daily to bring America together at a time we need it most. What should President Barack Obama be doing to make it happen? And why should anybody trust that either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump can do a better job? Now, in the minds of those who were dedicated to every word he uttered, Bernie Sanders had but one task: take down Hillary, save the Democrats. Turns out the craggy socialist believes he accomplished that, in a manner of speaking, but will his acolytes agree? And there is a fine line for every business when it comes to mixing politics and profits. A women's professional basketball team went what some would consider far over the line last night in seeming to support Black Lives Matter. The sports professor is here to detail if indeed a line has been badly crossed. Be part of what we do by getting on the line right now. Be ready to go at 1-877-Newsmax. I'm Ed Berliner, and this is The Hardline for Tuesday, July 12th, 2016.
I know that Americans are struggling right now with what we've witnessed over the past week. First, the shootings in Minnesota and Baton Rouge, the protests, then the targeting of police by the shooter here. An act not just of demented violence, but of racial hatred. All of it's left us wounded and angry and hurt. It's as if the deepest fault lines of our democracy have suddenly been exposed, perhaps even widened. We must reject such despair. I'm here to insist that we are not as divided as we seem. And I know that because I know America. I know how far we've come against impossible odds.
The time has come for America to drop the gloves and start paying attention to the real issue at the moment. The one that has everyone crying for answers, demanding political solutions, flocking to and believing certain media that couldn't tell the truth or their tongue would snap off. Solving the racial divide that some believe has never created such an expanse. That we have been told since the Democratic Reformation of the early 60s, this was a priority and would be healed maybe within a generation or two, but certainly not taking 4 and 5 generations later to have us right back in the abyss, seemingly with walls of mud to climb and no way out. Today, President Barack Obama spoke at a memorial service for the slain Dallas, Texas police officers. This, as a number of critics blame him for not paying enough attention during his time in office as the individual who was supposed to lead us out of this morass. And he needs to take his share of responsibility for leaving America adrift. Balance that with his supporters, who claim the president has done everything he could and should to seal the breach, blaming political opponents for seeking to put every roadblock possible in his path and ensure that he takes all the blame. And what of those who are now seeking to lead? Why should anyone believe that Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump are the ones who have the ability and the dedication to stop the killing and the distrust, while at the same time keeping in mind something few want to bring into the conversation: the responsibility of the American people themselves to stop being led by the proverbial and figurative no's in being told what to believe and whom to blame. You are part of this conversation simply by calling 1-877-Newsmax, 1-877-639-7629. Have an opinion? Stay on target. Make it count. Let's welcome in the former National Press Secretary for then presidential candidate Dr. Ben Carson, a veteran of the political wars as a press secretary and spokesperson, Deana Bass. Joined by the veteran writer for the National Review, veteran of the Iraq War and major in the U.S. Army Reserve, David French. I want to thank you both for being here for a very difficult and necessary conversation. Deana, let me begin with you. The president, in his remarks today in Texas, said, "We are not as divided as we seem." That would seem to smack right in the face of a number of Americans who believe we are now more divided than ever before, and no one is seeking to fix the rift. What's the truth, in your opinion?
You know, I think that we actually are more divided than the president would like to say at this point. It is a very uncomfortable conversation, and I think that President Obama has a responsibility to talk about it, but I would hope that he would not use the divisive rhetoric that he has used in the past. But I do believe that we are a nation that's pretty divided. I think that if you talk to people in the African American community and people who support the Black Lives Matter movement, they would say that we're divided. And if you talk to people who champion police forces across the U.S., they would say we're divided. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but it's a conversation that has to be had.
In your opinion, is the perception that the president is in favor of or supports, and again, I use the word perception, that some would point out, that he is in favor of or supports Black Lives Matter, is that at the heart of the people who distrust him and cause him to be the focus of blame?
I appreciate the use of the word perception, because I do believe that it is a perception. I would hope that the president would have equal support for both communities. And I think that, when I listened to his speech today, I actually wanted it to be a speech to celebrate the lives of the officers that have been slain, and not a speech to talk about or to admonish America for the negative things that are taking place in our society. I've had conversations with a lot of people today on this issue, and many people believe that this very speech needed to speak to both of those communities. But I think that people do distrust the president because, from the very beginning, his language towards the law enforcement community has been a bit disrespectful. Even when we go back to the Beergate conversation, I think within months of him being in office, talking about the stupidity of a police force versus the courage of a police force. So I think that his rhetoric has not been helpful. It's kind of fueled the flame of this controversy, of the unrest. But we also need to understand that the tension between the Black community and police forces across the U.S. predates President Obama. He does have the bully pulpit.
Indeed. David, I want to come to you next, because there are many officers who believe that the president has fueled the perception that they are all prone to racism, they are all prone to overreaction, and they are all out there seeking to do nothing more than to kill young Black men. Do you agree with those officers who believe that that is at a key right here, and the president missed that opportunity to strike that down?
I don't think the president has used rhetoric like that. I do agree that the president has seemed to be a little bit too ready to speak into an issue before he knows the evidence, going all the way back to the Beergate controversy near the beginning of his first term. I do think that that's a valid critique. He won't wait for the evidence before he speaks into an issue, and I do think that that increases tensions. But, look, we put more on a president than I think a president can deliver. The president isn't a messiah. He's not going to come into office and heal racial divisions. He's not going to come in to office and change American history. He's not going to come into office and change American hearts on a massive scale. People are people. People still make the same decisions they're going to make, and still have the same feelings in their heart that they have towards others. And a president of the United States, to be honest, only has a small cultural influence.
Well, but isn't it fair to say, though, David, that he does have, and as Deana put it, he's got the bully pulpit. He has got the media wrapped around his finger when he wants them 24/7, and he or she are the ones who can get out there and get ahead of a message. And I think that's what people are talking about here, that he's failed to get, in their opinion, failed to get out in front of the message, and maybe failed to talk about 5 dead cops first, or at least higher up in the discussion.
I will agree that he has a bully pulpit, but I don't think it is the case anymore in our culture that he has the bully pulpit. And I would agree that he has not used his bully pulpit as well as he could have, but there are a lot of very powerful cultural forces in play here that are every bit as strong, if not stronger, than political forces. And we have to recognize that, and we have to acknowledge that. Look, he speaks very clearly into the political subculture of the U.S. every single day. The President of the United States no longer, I believe, speaks clearly to all Americans every day. That's a role fulfilled by celebrities.
Let me do this then, David. This current president, but what about a former president, and perhaps the words that were said today? This is President George W. Bush. He was in attendance. He spoke. And I'm going to ask you both if this is the type of message that we need to hear more often. Here we go.
At times, it seems like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together. Argument turns too easily into animosity. Disagreement escalates too quickly into dehumanization. Too often we judge other groups by their worst examples, while judging ourselves by our best intentions.
Deana, is that the kind of message that we should be hearing from this president?
You know, I believe that is the kind of message that we should be hearing from this president. I believe that this is an opportunity to speak to our better angels, and we recognize this is a very painful couple of weeks in American history, right? But we have gone through things that are far more difficult, and we are a great nation, and we can weather these storms, and we can weather it by talking about the things that unite us rather than the things that divide us. And you know, I respect the office of the president. I respect the fact that he has a very difficult job. I don't dispute that at all. I just would love to hear from this president something that is more inspirational, as opposed to being admonished every time he speaks to the American people.
Let's look forward. I've only got about 90 seconds. I want you both to hear something. Donald Trump. He claims that he is the guy. He is in charge of law and order. He's the one who can bring order to these sorts of volatile incidents. Here's what he said.
We must maintain law and order at the highest level, or we will cease to have a country. 100%. We will cease to have a country. I am the law and order candidate.
David, 30 seconds to you first. Why should America trust either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton as the ones being able to seal this rift?
They can't trust either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. I mean, to hear this, Donald Trump spoke, for the first time maybe in the campaign, actually respectfully and appropriately about healing racial divisions in the immediate aftermath of the Dallas shooting. But this is a guy who's been stoking racial divisions for months up to this point. And as far as Hillary Clinton, this is a person who is a Democratic machine politician. She relies on identity politics to help turn out the vote. Neither one of these people are well equipped to lead America in a time of increasing strife and increasing polarization. They're just going to make it worse.
20 seconds and the same question to you, Deana. Why should we trust either one?
Well, my great hope is that we would be able to trust Donald Trump, and I'm saying that really because of the Supreme Court, and I can't trust Hillary with the Supreme Court. So because of that, I am going to cast my lot with Donald Trump and hope that he lives up to this promise of being the law and order president.
At the end of the day, let's face it, hope is the word that we all look for when it comes down to presidential elections. David French, Deana Bass, thank you so much for joining us. We'll speak again soon. Now, this next guest will speak before the gathered masses at the convention and can speak to a certain part of the platform no one seems to talk about, except us. Hardline continues.